You're one of the co-sponsors of this event at Red State Gathering. And what is it about this that makes it worth your while to come here and hang out with 400 or 500 conservatives?
I think Red State is one of those unique organizations that's sort of leading the charge in what I would consider a very decentralized, disintermediated political world. And it's now all about bloggers and activists and connecting with each other outside of the formal political structure. And Red State was one of the first to do that. We're also very simpatico in the sense that we're willing to take on the Republican establishment and not just challenge Democrats when they're wrong. And I've always said sometimes we have to beat the Republicans before we can beat the Democrats. So it's good to be back. I love the people here and what we're accomplishing.
Now, I was just sitting at the lunch table, and people were discussing whether they have an obligation to support people like Thad Cochran, for example, after the primary process is over, even though they vigorously opposed him. How do you feel about that? I mean, do you basically let the Republicans sort of hang themselves if that doesn't go the right way, or do you feel obligated to support the most conservative or the most fiscally responsible guy you can get?
Well, it's interesting because historically, in 10 and 12 and in 14, it's always been the establishment candidate that bolts the party when they lose the primary. Lisa Murkowski did it in Alaska, of course. Charlie Crist did it in Florida. Arlen Specter did it in Pennsylvania. So it does seem like there's two sets of rules, and we're constantly being browbeat to fall in line and support the Republican candidate. I suspect in Mississippi, regardless of what you and I think, a lot of activists will not vote for Thad Cochran because of the tactics they used. It's one thing to fight a tough primary, and I think we've always been willing to support the candidate that wins a fair primary, but that wasn't fair. They stole it, and they did it with some pretty underhanded tactics.
So we've now had about 6 Senate races that went against the so-called Tea Party candidate, the fiscally conservative, non-establishment candidate. Is that bad news for the Tea Party movement, or should Tea Party folks feel good that they have a strong voice at the table?
Yeah. Well, one thing you would look at those races, you have the margin of victory for incumbent Republicans is shrinking dramatically. And the trend line should be quite ominous if you are, say, John McCain thinking about running in 2016. But you should also look at the House. Justin Amash, a Tea Party conservative who was primaried by the U.S. Chamber and an establishment candidate with all the financing from the business community, Amash crushed him by 14 points.
Amash, an incumbent.
Yes, an incumbent, and that's what's important. We've actually held on to the gains that we made in the Liberty Caucus in 2010, 2012. We have grown it in 2014, particularly in the House, where we've added Ben Sass in the Senate, so that there's a lot more of us, even in this cycle. So I wouldn't be down. I would understand if you're an activist trying to topple Goliath. It's not easy.
Is it good for the establishment to, as you say, primary those guys who are the fiscally conservative candidates who got in there and are incumbents? Is that healthy?
Well, I think competition is healthy. And certainly Freedom Works is guilty of primarying establishment Republicans that we don't think deliver on their own promised fiscal conservatism. Competition in politics is only going to produce better outcomes. And if they want to come after our guys, bring it on. We'll be there.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.
Yeah.